You could feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances while the township supervisor.
An illegal appointment. That's what the trustees I talked to are calling this. They say the news took them by surprise, and now they're talking to legal counsel to figure out their...
The self-proclaimed super mayor, Tiffany Henyard, has always managed to maintain her prominence, but it appears that she is in over her head this time. Rumor has it that she is covertly negotiating with the FBI to escape a one-way trip to prison. This may be the last desperate step she takes to avoid the repercussions. Henyard is trying to drag others down with her as she closes in on her word on the street that her reign is coming to an end. But the surprise is that she's not the only one feeling the heat.
This is exclusive reporting from Dalton.
So how did we arrive here? Henyard has led Dalton, Illinois, a little community that suddenly became the center of a storm involving corruption, incompetence, and betrayal, through a wild journey. Only a few months ago, she was riding high, seemingly untouchable in her. Serving as both the mayor of Dalton and the supervisor of Thornton Township, she created the appearance of being the super mayor while cleaning up the village, but it turns out that she might have been cleaning up more than anybody knew.
We've been reporting on questionable spending by a South suburban politician named Tiffany Henyard, but we only knew half the...
The weirdest aspect is that, according to persons close to the matter, Henyard has been secretly talking with the federal government in an attempt to reach an agreement to avoid being taken to court. She may even be prepared to turn on her own supporters, the very people who assisted her, create her empire, and helped her with whatever she did. As the walls are closing in, it appears that Hen's loyalty has its limitations and that she's prepared to put anyone under the bus in order to protect herself.
You are up here at this special meeting and not downstairs where we have big meetings.
The talk of the town is that Henyard's legal team, which consists of two very skilled criminal defense lawyers who have represented well-known people, is working non-stop to get her the best deal possible. However, what does it mean for her inner circle? The same individuals who assisted her in planning what some have dubbed one of the boldest power grabs in local politics are now watching closely to see if they will be the next to fall from grace.
Absolutely not guilty of all 9 counts. I believe he's cooperating. And if you cooperate, you have to admit your guilt.
Rather than ascending to power alone, Henyard has a group of people working behind the scenes, all of whom contributed to what has now turned into a major political scandal. Keith Freeman is one such example. Henyard's closest friend at one point was Freeman, her trusty advisor in Thornton Township, and her right-hand man in Dalton worked together to control the village with an iron grasp. Freeman, the registered agent of Henyard's contentious charity and a former village administrator, was essential in assisting her in keeping Dalton's money under control until he wasn't.
The government always does it, is to go and investigate people around her, and
That's precisely what went down. Henyard allegedly tried to fire Freeman during a village board meeting after he was charged with bankruptcy fraud on a federal level, but the trustees said they wouldn't have it that way. One instance of Henyard's willingness to cut connections when things get ugly is Freeman's fall from grace. Now, there are rumors that Freeman may be working with investigators. If that turns out to be the case, it could be disastrous for Henyard and her entire empire.
And there's a time to hold people responsible and accountable.
Last but not least is Louis Lacey, a significant member of Henyard's inner circle and the former deputy police chief of Dalton. Although Lacey was no stranger to controversy, Henyard chose to reappoint him as the head of the police force despite Freeman's bankruptcy fraud charges. Despite the village trustees' protests, the department, another example of Henyard's intransigence and will to keep power at all costs, was Lacey's appointment. Like Freeman, Lacey stayed faithful to Henyard until the feds arrived.
We knew it was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done. It should be done.
Lacey, too, is currently under government investigation, and some people think he might be another pawn in Henyard's game of survival. Reports indicate that he received more than $200,000 in overtime compensation, despite his name being associated with dubious overtime payments. Not being qualified for it, the timing of these payouts has drawn criticism, with many assuming that Henyard was behind a wider scam. However, now that Lacey is in significant legal danger, he may be ready to make a deal of his own.
Residents are paying for her.
And it goes beyond that. As the scandal developed, Carmen Carlisle, Henyard's former aide who later became a trustee, turned on Henyard, accusing her of predatory behavior and unethical behavior. Carlisle had previously been a devoted follower of the supermayor. For the past 2 years, Carlisle alleges Henyard has exerted influence over residents, employees, and vendors by using her position to funnel taxpayer funds into personal projects and luxuries, all the while presenting a false picture of success. Carlisle's scathing accusation puts her at odds with the lady who used to trust her. Within her inner circle, Carlisle's whistleblower claims went beyond general accusations. She detailed how the Henyard's administration spent astronomical sums of money on first-class flights, 5-star hotels, and upscale dining, all on taxpayer dollars. For example, one trip to Austin, Texas, reportedly cost the village over $220,000, with Henyard and her entourage stacking up bills at steakhouse dinners and luxury hotels, not to mention the $333,000 she allegedly spent in a single day on Amazon purchases. These extravagant expenditures have not only raised eyebrows, they are now at the center of the ongoing federal investigation into her financial mismanagement.
A one day purchase of over $40,000 to Amazon. And the main thing is,
Henyard's spending patterns have been the subject of months of intensive investigation, with village trustees consistently demanding openness. The village's general fund balance fell precipitously from a surplus of more than $5 million in 2022 to a deficit of around $4 million by 2024. The financial crisis that many people think is directly related to Henyard's careless expenditure. Former mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, who was employed to look into Henyard's financial affairs, discovered that police expenses had increased dramatically while Henyard was in office. Some officers received more overtime than their base pay. One officer earned over $100,000 in overtime pay in a single fiscal year, which was more than twice his regular salary.
Just be on the street fighting crime, and instead we have several officers that are riding around.
But this is where things start to get really interesting. As the federal government looks more closely at Henyard's finances, some people are beginning to question whether this whole situation will bring down more people than just the mayor, since so many of her allies are already in legal hot water. It's about a network of people who have banded together to benefit themselves at the village's expense, not just one individual. Henyard is allegedly willing to blame them all if doing so will allow her to go without doing time.
What's interesting about this case, this story, is you can be highly legal and unethical.
At a board meeting in recent weeks, the tension between Henyard and the village board reached a breaking point. Village trustees decided to restrict Henyard's ability to use credit cards for unauthorized purchases and to place limits on the amount of money that could be spent on special events. Perceived as overt attempts to limit Henyard's power and prevent her from carrying on her extravagant spending binge. But Henyard isn't giving up. She has vetoed several board decisions and is proceeding with her own plans despite the intense investigation surrounding her.
As the supervisor, there will be no comments, there will be anything that is me addressing you guys to me.
Additionally, what about those who once backed her but are now criticizing her? Chris Gonzalez, a Thornton Township trustee, has been outspoken in his criticism of her spending and has called her out for authorizing events that weren't even within the township's budget, such as the notorious Taste of Thornton Township event, where Henyard spent. Despite the fact that the event was a complete failure and almost nobody showed up, Henyard gave the performers top pay for their 30-minute sets despite spending $85,000 on a little concert that included B. Sarah Cake Wed and rapper Jay Holiday. Another indication that the rifts in Henyard's support system are widening is Gonzalez's criticism.
Journal, Trustee Chris Gonzalez said,
For the administration can adhere to some financial limits, we're not looking to necessarily...
Everyone is wondering who would bear the consequences if Henyard decides to sell on her allies, as there are rumors that she may have a deal with the FBI. If she does, it may spell the end of their careers and possibly their freedom. As additional information about the Henyard's secret negotiations comes to light, it is evident that this tale is far from done. Will Freeman, Lacey, and Corral be brought down with her, or will they make their own agreements to escape going to jail? The scandal has already rocked Dalton to its foundation, and the next shocking revelation will come soon. The days of Henyard controlling the village with an iron fist are definitely coming to an end. The only question now is who will follow her down. But let's take a moment to consider how Tiffany Henyard got into this situation in the first place. Even if it seems like things are getting out of hand, her demise didn't happen overnight. Her tenure in office has been characterized by the amount of corruption and chaos she unleashed on the village of Dalton is unmatched by any scandal. Her so-called super mayor was elected on promises to clean up the town, but it didn't take long for people to realize that Henyard wasn't actually cleaning up the village. Rather, she was cleaning out its bank accounts. Residents who once shared her vision of a better Dalton are now witnessing the moral and financial collapse of their town, which is why Henyard has come to be known as Dalton Tyrant, and there is proof of this everywhere. First, let's review the fundamentals. Misuse of funds was the starting point for Henyard's problems. From the day she entered office, she was irresponsible and not simply negligent with Dalton's money. She spent thousands of dollars on extravagant excursions and handled the village's budget like her own credit card. Upscale eateries and opulent lodgings.
Tonight's meeting had a much different tone than what we've experienced previously at Dalton City Council meetings. Now, the room was full of Henyard supporters, and they wanted me to be sure to tell you that they applauded for her several times as she talked about the township being in a great place financially. Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany
Henyard and her entourage spent over $20,000 on a 5-day stay in Austin, Texas, including over $1,000 at the posh Fairmont Austin Hotel. Keep in mind that this was not a fast vacation. Comparable indulgences were documented during other taxpayer-funded trips. Travels to New York. Henyard was not amenable to the trustees of Portland Village and Atlanta, trying to stop her spending spree, and she overruled their attempts to look into her spending while accruing more than $67,000 in travel expenses in a 5-month period.
It's shameful. Y'all are a disgrace.
We're watching a fall.
Additionally, in addition to the travel, she spent $33,000 on Amazon in a single day. To make matters worse, there are no transparent records that explain the purpose of the $33,000, so it's no surprise that the village's finances collapsed under her leadership by the time former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was enlisted to carry out an impartial inquiry. Deep financial difficulties already plagued the village. The early assessment from Lightfoot showed that Dalton's general fund had fallen from a healthy $5 million surplus to an astounding $3.5 million deficit.
also distributed a breakdown of the township's finances from 2017 to current, where Henyard's team says years ago they were in a deficit of more than $2 million. And now, today, under her administration, her team says there's a surplus of more than $6 million.
The way the Henyard's administration handled overtime compensation for the police department under her supervision is even more concerning. 2 officers were earning more overtime than their base pay, and 1 officer received over $100,000 in extra pay. Alone, keep in mind that this is a village of only a little over 20,000 people. What could possibly excuse such expenditures, although the financial irresponsibility is just one aspect of the story? From day one, it was evident that she was not following the rules. Rather, she was creating her own. Her behavior during her tenure in government has been nothing short of ridiculous.
They'll turn up more and more information. They'll turn up more leads. They may turn up more witnesses. They may find a cooperator. They may find an informant, all which will benefit the investigation tremendously.
But based on what we know now, if you're Tiffany Henyard, how are you feeling?
I would be nervous.
In order to silence critics and solidify her hold on Dalton and Thornton Township, Henyard has been charged with using her position of authority to threaten and retaliate against her opponent. One of her most well-known instances of bullying was when she gave her personal police detail instructions to follow. Those locals who dared to criticize her personal safety, her influence was extended by a force that was financed by the exact taxpayers she was depleting. Former Dalton Police Chief Robert Collins even discussed how Henyard's incessant need for a sizable security detail hindered the department's capacity to combat crime.
Anything that relates to the credit card. As you heard me speak today in my board meeting, I do not have that.
Some of those charges are for you, though.
No, sir.
You didn't go to Las Vegas? What is that?
Instead of having police officers on the streets, they were following Henyard around as her personal bodyguards. We needed those officers to be on the streets fighting crime, but instead they were riding around guarding the mayor. Henyard's harsh methods weren't limited to that. She also found ways to retaliate against her political rivals, as demonstrated in the case of Valeria Stubbs, a former trustee and outspoken opponent of Henyard Stubbs, whose home was shot at in the middle of the night despite the fact that no one was hurt. Stubbs has consistently implied that an act of intimidation may have been planned by Henyard.
He's been harassed and his business raided and shut down by Dalton police. He believes because he refused to make a donation to a civic event sponsored by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
And I talked to a couple of agents and I explained them what was going on. I gave them all my papers.
Even though there isn't any hard proof that Henyard was involved in the shooting, the incident does add to the growing list of accusations made against the mayor. Henyard's behavior has become so brazen that she even recorded herself shoveling snow from Stubbs' driveway during a snowstorm while calling Stubbs her hater in an odd attempt to mock her. This move shocked many, but for those acquainted with Henyard's antics in Dalton, it was just another day of misusing taxpayer funds, controlling village resources, and abusing power. All of this pointed to a lady who thought she was untouchable, which for a time seemed to be the case. But now that the FBI is chasing her, the Henyard empire is collapsing.
2 years on allegations of corruption surrounding Henyard in her capacity as Dalton Mayor and Thornton Township Supervisor. And now we've learned from multiple sources that federal agents are in fact interviewing witnesses as part of a possible investigation that may or may not result in...
The fact that the federal government isn't merely snooping around their closing is evident from the federal subpoenas served to Dalton and Thornton Township. According to reports, the subpoenas are looking for documents on everything from the village's finances to the Henyard political fund and even her cancer charity, which has come under fire for its own dubious activities. The Tiffany Henyard Foundation does care about. Originally intended to be a nonprofit organization that assisted cancer patients, the foundation is tainted by controversy, much like everything else associated with Henyard. In addition to failing to submit the necessary financial disclosures to the state, Thornton Township donated $10,000 to the foundation on the day it was chartered.
To our seniors, and they told us your card doesn't work.
Now stand in the fight because I want the boys and girls of the next generation to see what it looks like to come out of controversy and to come out of all the hatred, unfaith. At the end of the day, God gives the test.
Although not all records indicate that a large portion of the foundation's costs were billed to the village's credit card, with more than $1,000 being spent on lodging, food, photography, and even DJs. These revelations have caused many to wonder if the foundation was ever genuinely about charity or whether it was just another way for Henyard to fund her personal endeavors. As Henyard's legal issues keep getting worse, it's becoming more and more obvious that her time is running out.
On anything. That's all I can tell you now. So I'm just trying to answer to the...
So you say there's a foundation that's not registered, but it has nothing to do with you?
Correct. That's true.
Okay.
That's
so you're not aware of any of the work that they've done, money that they've raised, anything along those lines?
Henyard might face severe jail time if found guilty of the allegations against her, which is why many people think she's ready to cut her losses. The rumors of her arrangement with the FBI appear more credible every day and turn against her comrades, but will her agreement be sufficient to keep her alive? More importantly, what will it imply for the other members of her inner circle? Henyard's decision to leave this without bringing down a few people is difficult to believe.
Received the information today. We have the best mayor ever. I've been here since 1993. And she's the best we ever had.
You know, you're doing a lot of programs, good programs for, the senior citizens. and you're doing a lot of programs for, people who are on a fixed budget. But what about the people, the blue-collar people who are still...
Henyard may not have as much power as she believes if it turns out that her former right-hand man, Keith Freeman, has been working with the federal government for months. Although Freeman's role in the village's financial mismanagement is widely known, he is not the only person in Henyard's circle having problems. The former Lacey. Another important person who can soon find himself in the spotlight is the deputy police chief. The part Lacey played in the overtime, Pay Red Flags, has already been raised by scandal, and now that he is being charged with bankruptcy fraud, it will only be a matter of time until the federal government begins to inquire into this link with Henyard.
I was young, dumb, didn't know nothing, was gonna let y'all come and manipulate me. I didn't do any of that. So because I didn't do any of that, you guys start this whole...
The last nail in her coffin might be Freeman's decision to turn against Henyard and testify against her. Additionally, Carmen Carlisle, the former ally who became a whistleblower, has spoken out against. The local political scene has already been rocked by Henyard, but she could be a great help to the federal investigation if she has more damning evidence about the mayor.
Las Vegas?
Of course I do.
Were you?
It's not paid by them.
Did you fly first class to Las Vegas?
Any other questions?
Carlisle has made devastating allegations of unethical behavior and manipulation within the Henyard administration, and her insider knowledge of how things work behind the scenes may give the feds the proof they need to bring Henyard down as the inquiry progresses. It's evident that this is about more than just Tiffany Henyard now. Rather, it's about a network of deceit that has enveloped an entire village, leaving its citizens disillusioned and destitute. The residents of Dothan trusted Henyard to guide them, but she turned them into financial debt.
The FBI, which said it is policy for the agency not to comment on the nature, existence, or non-existence of any investigation that may be occurring. A public relations firm responded on behalf of the mayor, saying neither Henyard or the village of Dalton had received any subpoenas or been contacted by the FBI or any other law enforcement.
As the FBI presses in, it's unclear how many more secrets will be made public before this story comes to an end. Meanwhile, there are still rumors of a Henyard secret deal. But one thing is for sure, Dalton's super mayor will continue to be mentioned whether she strikes a deal or leaves. Down battling Tiffany Henyard. The only question remaining is who will be the next to fall, and reign is ending, but she won't leave without a fight. Please share your ideas in the comments below, and remember to like. For further updates on this ongoing story, subscribe as well. Until we meet again, thanks for watching Visual Vortex.